You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Dahlia Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-Dr. Dahlia, 1-877-DOCDALI. Well, the bane of most of our existences is the beer belly. And we keep hearing that if you have a beer belly, you could be at increased risk for heart disease, cancer, other health problems. And the beer belly is one of the most difficult things to get rid of. And our bodies love to deposit fat in our abdominal area. So one of the latest studies confirms that having a beer belly, not so good. There was a study of 2,200 adults, and it found that abdominal fat causes heart muscle thickening and reduced chamber volume. And this study was necessary. I know a lot of people say, gosh, why do we still have studies reiterating the obvious? Well, because why? Why does fat that's going in your middle section, how does that affect the heart? So German researchers found that men with fat deposits around the abdomen showed clear signs of early heart damage, even if they weren't necessarily overweight. So they want to understand why abdominal fat affected the heart. So they, according to the lead author, Jennifer Early, MD, radiology resident at University Medical Center, Hamburg-Eppendorf, said abdominal obesity, a high waist-to-hip ratio, is associated with more concerning cardiac remodeling patterns than high body mass index alone. Now, we've been talking about how this body mass index metric has been under a lot of fire by doctors because some, like we got a French bulldog and we got a Bichon. And the French bulldog is so meaty and so much more buff that even though they look the same size, that dog is heavier. And so the BMI, cannot necessarily be used as an all across the board consistent metric when you have lighter frame, different demographics in play. And so the BMI has been kind of under fire. It's important, and people like it because it's a number, is my BMI too high? And some people still like going by BMI, but what is actually, where is your weight? Do you have a high BMI because you've got a lot of muscle mass and you've been working out? Or do you have a high BMI because of your waist to hip ratio? So waist to hip ratio has been something that a lot of doctors have been asking that we use as a standard. So the research team looked at 2,200 adults between the ages of 46 and 78, none of whom had a diagnosis of heart disease. They had a high-resolution MRI scan to look at their heart size, thickness, volume of the heart chambers, and then they also collected their health information, weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, etc. And instead of relying solely on BMI, which can miss where the fat is stored and distributed, they decided to use the waist-to-hip ratio, comparing the circumference of the waist to the hips and determine how much fat sits around the abdomen. Now, I used to have a really small waist and a big booty. And so now I got a big waist and a big booty. So my metrics have really changed. Anyway, so high ratios point to visceral fat, which is the deeper metabolically active fat linked to inflammation and organ stress. And men with higher waist-to-hip ratios showed a pattern of thicker heart muscles and smaller internal chamber volume, which means that the heart muscle had to become bulkier, work harder, but wasn't holding enough blood and then hence had to work harder to pump the blood. Now, I know some of you are like, well, then why don't we just make our butts smaller? If we can make our butts, or don't make our butts bigger, it just doesn't work that way. What we got to do is we got to get rid of the abdominal fat. Based on BMI alone, 69% of males and 56% of females in the study were considered overweight. Using waist-to-hip ratio, however, 91% of the males and 64% of the females met the criteria for obesity. So we might be even missing people going, you know what, your BMI was right under the wire, you were good, but if they have abdominal fat, they're in trouble. So knowing that this is a bad thing, what do we do? How to get rid of the beer belly? And it's interesting because I see all these ads say, well, this is how you get rid of your beer belly. This is how you get rid of abdominal fat. This is how you do it. So my advice, which I really need to take as well, is one is avoid the foods that do, I guess, shall we say, exacerbate your fat distribution. So you want to definitely cut the fats. I know people say, well, if I eat meat and not carbs, that fat is good. And not if you eat too much of it. If you eat too much of it, it's going to deposit. Another thing also is you got to cut the sugars. The sugars turn to fat. And I love sugar. I have a sweet tooth. Number 3 is when you do work out and exercise, it can't just be about the legs or the butt, or the arms. Okay. I like walking, running, things that really use your core. I'm a little nervous about sit-ups because of the back and the discs, but crunches and other abdominal exercises that protect your back, I think are very, very important. Because again, if you're using that muscle and you're burning energy, then some of the fat stores will be hopefully used and extinguished. And then stress. We forget that stress causes fat deposition. Now, I know that's hard because we have a lot of stressors. I do. And that's not easy. And I went from having an amazing waist to overnight. And I remember what went on. There was stress. And I wasn't eating anything differently. I wasn't adding any new calories. I was still working out. So when you exercise and when you work out, don't just concentrate on the abdomen because your fat will distribute in other places. One of my family members had a friend who did liposuction, quote unquote, everywhere. And she had liposuction all over the place. And then within a year, she had the fattest neck that my family member ever saw. Well, it's because the fat needs to deposit somewhere. So understand that fat deposition happens when your body can't use the fat, when there's too much of it. And if you are over ingesting too much sugar so the body doesn't go to the fat stores, you're not exercising enough. And so it's definitely not easy. I know beer bellies, that's the hardest thing to get rid of, but I've seen people get rid of their beer bellies. And what they did is they first lost the weight. Another thing is they did cut the beer and the alcohol. Beer, alcohol causes fat deposition. So we'll have some good news later this show, but just wanted to talk about beer bellies because unfortunately, not easy. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. All right. We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So while we're watching what's going on in Minnesota with that huge scandal and frauding of public funds and taxpayer dollars, now we've been told that taxpayers in Maine have been built out of millions of dollars from their state's Medicaid program. This is according to a whistleblower who, in an interview with News Nation, likened the case to the current scandal in Minnesota. In Minnesota, there has been a fraud investigation that is looking at multiple individuals. I believe 79% of whom fall within the Somali community, accused of defrauding taxpayers of $1 billion meant for social services in Minnesota. However, in Maine, and I'm suspecting as well as you all are that this is not just unique to Minnesota alone. I am sure multiple states, including California, Arizona, etc. I am sure that multiple states have had individuals defraud the system. It could be anywhere from people collecting them from their deceased relatives to making fake companies. And that is one of the sources of the investigation in Minnesota, where there were fake companies that are fake charities made to feed the hungry and feed the children. And that money then got distributed elsewhere. So in Maine, there's a whistleblower, and this is being reported by The Hill. Christopher Barbardini describes himself as a former billing guru of Gateway Community Services, a health services contractor that he says defrauded Maine's Medicaid program. He worked for Gateway from May 2018 until April 2025 as a program coordinator. Now, he alleges that Gateway oversaw a system in which false records were filed about client visits. He alleges an electronic monitoring system designed to track movements was manipulated to make it seem like field staff were visiting low-income and disabled clients, when in reality, they didn't come within miles of their homes. Then they charged taxpayers for providing services that were never performed. He said, I just couldn't fathom it. I thought we were helping people. I thought this was all on the up and up. Now, Bernardini had an interview with News Nation, in an exclusive News Nation, and The Hill is reporting on this. He says, I have a passion for helping people, and I thought that we were doing the right thing this whole time. So this is the tip of the iceberg. You know, people have been getting swindled. They've been using the vulnerable population as a tool to this. Well, we're helping this person. We're helping this person. They might even be naming these individuals. These individuals, they're not getting money. They're not getting the help they need. And you and I are paying for this. So his allegations have now received considerable attention from media, but more of the conservative media. I don't think all the other outlets are talking about it. He says he grew disillusioned when, quote, I saw they were swindling people when I had clients calling me to tell me their staff hadn't shown up, and I was told to bill those hours anyway. It just got worse and worse until I started really putting up a stink. He said, I demanded a full investigation when I heard, now Senator Matt Harrington, a Republican, said he did demand a full investigation when he heard initial reporting about his welfare fraud scandal last May. So, what's going on here? Now, Senator Matt Harrington says the Mills administration, Governor Janet Mills, has neglected obvious and credible reports of Somali-linked systemic fraud in the Maine care system. This is an outrageous betrayal of Maine taxpayers. So now there's this common denominator here. However, not all fraudsters have been linked to the Somali community. But what is going on here? And so obviously Trump has, as a result, started to limit immigration even more, wants to vet who's here. But this is frightening because our Medicaid program cannot exist. It doesn't have enough funds to help all the individuals that are requiring funding. And our Medicare system is a mess. People say, well, Dr. Dahlia, that could be our public option. We'll just all buy into Medicare. You don't want Medicare. Most seniors are really, really unhappy with what Medicare doesn't cover. And I'm really sick of this whole Part A, Part B, Part D Medicare, and then needing to buy an Advantage supplement or a Medigap, Part C. This is, our seniors need something simpler. And it's a mess. Our SNAP benefits. 20% of Washington, D.C. residents are on SNAP, needing SNAP. 1 in 8 Americans need supplemental nutrition. Is it that we're all impoverished? Is it that we're all undernourished? Or are people applying for it and using it who don't need it? And let's say all those millions of Americans, those 80 million Americans really need SNAP. Then how do we continue the funding? How do we ensure that it's solvent, that there's funding? Well, we have to make sure there's no fraud. And it blows my mind that this stuff has been going on. As a physician, and as a medical student, they scared the living daylights out of us to what happens if we accidentally bill Medicare or Medicaid wrong. We go to jail. You just don't mess with Medicare and Medicaid. In fact, they scare students so much that you have many doctors that get out of medical school saying, I'm not going to take Medicare or Medicaid. I just don't want to take the risk. Or have a biller bill the wrong thing and I get in trouble. I mean, the rules are so strict that doctors are even fearful of filing claims because they don't want anything to be misconstrued, because the penalties are huge. The penalties are so And then you have this type of BS? What are they thinking? Is it because they thought, well, there's a shutdown? Is it because the government's not watching because government workers don't do their jobs? Is it because they thought during the Biden administration nobody's going to care? There are immigrants, so we're helping immigrants. And then I want to be a country where we do help immigrants. I'm a daughter of an immigrant. Our legal immigration system is a beacon of freedom all across the globe. We cannot take in more immigrants. We can't help immigrants if we don't have the funding. This has got to get addressed. This has got to get fixed. And I fear all the reports we're going to hear. I fear all the whistleblowers that, I'm glad the whistleblowers are coming out, but I think this is the tip of a monstrous iceberg. And so what do? How do you fix the situation? We could complain all day long. How do you fix the situation? Well, you fix the situation by, let's just start over. Let's just evaluate who's getting the funds. Everybody reapply. We'll help you reapply if you have a disability and can't. But let's take a look at who actually is applying. This person, John Smith, who apparently is 137 years old. Can we have him reapply? I'd like to meet John Smith, who's 137 years old. Let's just look at who is taking the funds. And then there has to be a feedback mechanism and a checks and balances. Was that visit done? This is why I was so mad at that one patient who I took care of late that Friday night when I told you she was knocking on the door. We were already closed, and my nurse manager was with me. She's like, please, I'm having vaginal itching. I need you to help me. So we opened up. I took care of her. I did vaginal cultures, sent them to LabCorp because she had United Health Insurance. So United Health Insurance, they had to go to LabCorp. I gave her medicine. She was happy. She said, thank you. She leaves. This was late on a Friday night. And then months later, I get a call from United Healthcare saying the patient said, I never saw her. She doesn't know who I am. She got a $40 bill in the mail and that I committed fraud because she doesn't know who I am and I never did a exam on her. So I asked them, I go, before we begin, can you just answer me one question? Did you pay a claim for a vaginal culture to LabCorp that was done at 17:39 that evening? They said, yes, we did. I go, okay, I'm ready to answer your questions. They go, never mind. Sorry to bother you. So, I mean, there's actually people out there lying about not being seen when they were seen. So we should have ample, good, ethical people that will, be able to say, look, this person didn't come. Now we got to make sure they don't get threatened. We want to make sure there's no repercussions, but there has to be a way where they go on the Medicaid website and say, yep, I saw them. This was done. Thank you. We got to make sure nobody hacks that. But there has to be some checks and balances because this is an absolute mess. And so I hope this administration, and this might be the only administration who ever does it, really roots out all the fraud and saves us the billions upon billions of dollars that we need to help those in need. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Dahlia. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
Increase fuel economy up to 7.9% with Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme, the solution to maximize your engine's performance and fuel economy. Whether you're driving a sports car or a daily commuter, Gasoline Extreme is specially formulated with PEA to deep clean. Don't settle for an average driving experience. Upgrade to Hot Shot Secret Gasoline Extreme and go further on each tank. Order now on Amazon or HotShotSecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So on Friday, the Supreme Court agreed to review the legality of President Donald Trump's executive order to end birthright citizenship in the United States that would affect all persons born in the U.S. to undocumented parents or parents with lawful temporary status in the country. This is an executive order that Trump had signed on his first day back in office, and even though it would break 150 years of legal precedent, it would address his reasoning behind the executive order to be to address individuals who are coming to this country to have a child so that they could anchor here and become United States citizens. Now, the 14th Amendment was ratified back in 1868. And I believe it was proposed right after the Civil War to grant it was a Reconstruction Amendment to grant citizenship and equal protection under the law for all persons born or naturalized in the United States, including formerly enslaved individuals. And this was expanding civil rights and due process to allow those who were taken from their homes, brought to America, sold as slaves, and then had kids. We wanted to protect those individuals, give them immediate citizenship, protect their children, give their children citizenship. And it was a very, very popular amendment and still agreed upon to this day. However, I don't think anybody foresaw what would happen. And I mean, there were even movies that would meme or they would make light of what has been happening with people coming across the border to have a baby so that they can, and I never thought that was funny, because those individuals are obviously trying to flee horrible, horrific conditions. They want what's best for their child. I don't blame parents for wanting to have a child here in America so that the child could become an American citizen and they can too. The problem is there's such a desire for people to come to America, and many of them have very, very good reasons, especially with all the horrific violence and the way individuals are treated in multiple countries, that how do you pick and choose who gets to come here? And somebody wanting to come here so their baby could become American is now starting to fall on the priority list as somebody who is trying to avoid the cartels, trying to avoid militia violence. And so it's, it got to the point now that millions and millions of individuals are coming to the country illegally and then having babies that make their stay here legal. There's going to obviously be, and somebody's going to address the situation. And it stinks because it's like, the situation would have been good, right? And somebody pings the radar. Somebody wakes up the sleeping giant when you have a president such as Biden that completely abused what the Constitution stood for. And so now you have individuals who are like, well, look, I made the trek. I came here because this is the law of the land for 150 years. Right? If I'm not a slave, but I'm coming here, I could have a baby here, and so birthright citizenship is now up for debate. It's a beautiful thing. But interestingly, when my family came to this country, they made sure they were citizens first. My father did not want to get married or have a baby before that and jeopardize, because it's funny because many immigrants don't believe that will hold. They're like, and so my family was so afraid that they would have to leave America if they didn't do everything by the book, that they decided to do everything by the book. And then after my father became a citizen, then he got married, he had me. So it was years after. And so nobody can say, okay, well, you did, just in case any laws changed. And so it's interesting because other immigrants are like, you really can't do this in other countries, but we could do it in America. Well, of course we have that amendment because of the horrific conditions and the kidnappings and the abductions of individuals from their countries to become slaves in America. That we had to make them citizens, and understandably so, and it should have been done. We should have never had slaves, but the horrific things that were done to Americans, and that was a very, very small attempt to try and address, give them a home, and a new home as a freed American. And so it's different now what that amendment is being used for today. So oral arguments in this case are expected to be held sometime between February and April next year, with the ruling expected from the High Court by the end of June. So, where I stand on this is I understand somebody coming here, the baby is born here, the baby's American. That's something that bipartisanly we never had an issue with until there were so many. If we were only talking about 100 cases a year, this wouldn't be an issue. But it's not 100 cases. We're talking about millions. And that's what happened. Ping the radar. Trump's order would reinterpret the 14th Amendment, which states all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So I think Ted Cruz, when he was fighting with Donald Trump during the primary, I forget when this happened. I think Donald Trump had suggested that Ted Cruz could not run for president because he wasn't American. But I think they said he was born in Canada, but his American parents were working in Canada. I think they were diplomats. And when they had him, he's technically American because but they were stationed or doing their duties in another country at the time. And I don't think he has Canadian citizenship. You guys might know more about this than that. But these are some of the more rare cases where you have somebody working here saying, well, have me work in America so that my child could be born in America at the time. And then there's also tourism. There's a huge tourism industry where people will pay during their 9th month of pregnancy to come to America, stay here, give birth at a hospital so their baby could become an American citizen. That you're taking advantage of a situation that is not really yours to take advantage of. So it'll be interesting to see what the Supreme Court does. I mean, do we have to make a new one? It is an amendment, but there is new language set forth by the Trump administration that has been blocked by lower courts. But they want its language is going to clarify what happens if it's illegal immigrant parents or those who were here legally but on temporary non-immigrant visas and are not citizens by birthright. So the Supreme Court ruling can have huge, huge implications. And this is it can also affect I guess they say 150,000 children in the U.S. are born annually to parents of non-citizens. An estimated 4.4 million American-born children under 18 are living with an illegal immigrant parent. So it's not going to be an easy, because then the next issue is if the Supreme Court agrees with Trump saying, this was designed, post-World Civil War. This is, the people have taken advantage of this. We are allowed to now, make, rules and guidelines on who justifies, to become an American citizen. Then what do we do with individuals who are currently here and pregnant? What do we do with the children? Do they get their citizenship revoked? Or starting as of the day the Supreme Court rules, no more citizenship for a child born in America. It's not going to be easy, and it's going to draw a lot of criticism. But unfortunately, we're in this position now where there are just there's just too many individuals trying to make the trek to do that, and we have to have some control over the situation, and we have to make sure that we are here for those who are legally here and went through the legal process and having children here that do deserve a right as well. It's not easy when it comes to children, because I want every child to become an American citizen who wants to be. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOCDALI. So over the last few days, you saw a lot of, back and forth and criticism of Odell Beckham Jr. talking about how $100 million doesn't seem to go as far as you think. And I'm actually really, really glad he brought this up. I'm really, really glad he brought up the topic of financial literacy. And it's really, really interesting. Odell Beckham Jr., I think, helped the Rams win a Super Bowl, wide receiver, fantastic player. And he kind of broke down what happens when athletes get $100 million. Okay. It's not $100 million because there's taxes. Now he says $100 million, it's 5 years for $60 million after taxes. Says you're getting taxed, do the math. That's 12 a year that you have to spend, use, save, invest, flaunt, whatever. He said, I'm going to buy a car. I'm going to give my mama a house. Really cool. Buys his mama a house. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Good for him. And everything costs money. He says, so if you're spending $4 million a year, that's really $40 million over 5 years, 8 a year. So he does the math. He says after taxes, buying property, investments, regular expenses, the money isn't as much as it appears. He says, so you start breaking down the numbers, and it's like that for a 5-year span of where you're getting $8 million. Can you make that last forever? And you always hear the people who ain't us and ain't be in the position like, oh, that would last a lifetime, unquote. He says, quote, yeah, this job I sacrificed my whole life for, they're giving me that. I didn't ask for the certain dollar amount or whatever, but we weren't taught about no financial literacy. We weren't taught this skill, end quote. He's right. So yeah, I remember I told you there was somebody who made $1 million a year, and she lived in New York. And by the time she broke it down, she had less money than you would think, because she had to have security. She had to pay for rent. She had to pay for the clothes and the makeup and the transportation and the whatever. I'm not playing a violin, but you hear these contracts in sports, you hear the money these people are making, and you're like, whoa, I mean, your jaw drops. But when you make, a lot of money, you end up spending a lot of money. And when you look at John Lennon, being killed on a street, years after the Beatles broke up. Once you're in that position, they always say it's kind of a curse when you hit a level of notoriety or fame, because you can have somebody just stalking you for decades. And here you are, just, you're not working anymore. You're not making that kind of money. You're at Walmart buying some groceries. And then where's your security? Where's your protection? Where's your, and you don't have the money for that. But the financial literacy aspect is extremely important. So I believe the NFL does offer financial literacy. I'm sure MLB. I'm sure a lot of these major leagues will offer financial literacy classes to individuals who start getting that kind of money. But look at the average kid. Look at the average teenager. I mean, when I grew up in the 80s, if somebody told me that I would be walking around with a $1,200 iPhone, or that's what an iPhone would cost, it would be a computer in my pocket. I would be like, how do you get that money? And they're like, well, it's not only the iPhone, you also have to pay for the service and then pay for apps, and I'm looking at these kids going, do you understand how much money you're spending or how much money your family is spending? I remember my kids playing World of Warcraft and they were really upset because one of their friends bought cheats. I think you could buy gold or you could buy things to help you. I'm like, why are you spending money on a video game? And we don't really teach kids financial literacy. Now, when I explained how I want schools to be, yes, financial literacy is in there. Remember I said schools where your core classes are no more than 20, 30 minutes. They're done in the morning. Then you have lunch either at home or at school where you won't be bullied, wherever. And then the afternoon is all about the practical learning, where every kid across America, depending on their year of age, will be exposed to farming, will be exposed to first aid, will be exposed to the trades, electricians, mining, marketing, teaching. So by the time they're all 16 and they graduate, they are pretty well rounded. They also know how to feed themselves. They know survival situations. They know how to defend themselves. They know basic CPR, first aid, basic medicine, another language. So the afternoon is all about the practical learning, and financial literacy is a part of that. They graduate at the age of 16. And then year 17 and 18, age 17 and 18 is where they get their associate's degree or their trade certificate. We don't have to pay extra for free college now, no student loans. It's all a part of that K through 12 program. It's free and it's kids love it. Everybody graduates at the age of 18 with either an associate's degree or a trade certificate. I think it's a brilliant idea. I don't think anybody's ever going to do it, but part of that is financial literacy, how to handle the money that you get. And I saw this with a lot of doctors. So you're poor and you borrow. You average $1 an hour in residency, between your 36-hour shifts, although now it's a little different. They're making more in residency. But you get out of residency and all of a sudden, these people in the 90s were getting $140,000 a year, $140,000 a year. And I saw people throw that money on homes and cars and I'm like, slow it down a little bit, right? Slow it down because you got to pay off loans. You forget your tax burden now. Now you're considered rich. So, 30, 40% is going to taxes. And I saw people go bankrupt within their first year of leaving medical school. And I think that's also why we're seeing such a problem with college students. They're borrowing, they finally get a job. They get a job that's 70 a year, 80 a year, maybe 100,000 a year. They think they're in the money. They don't understand. Well, you got taxes, you have rent to pay, you have to buy professional clothes, you need to pay for gas, you have to pay off your student loans, and it's the money doesn't last like you think it does. So we're not really helping the situation out with all the Wi-Fi and internet connections and iPhones and apps. And we're teaching kids because kids are now consumers. See, the consumers used to be the mom of the family, and that's how all the May Company and Sears catalog, they knew how to get to mom. But now they're getting to your kids. So these kids are seeing ads. Like, I want to download this, I want to buy this. And on their phone, they could do it on their own. So now they're spending your money. Are we teaching the kids how to handle it? Also, chores. I mean, you're supposed to do chores. In my family, you don't eat if you don't do chores. And then they would give us a little extra allowance. Sometimes we got allowances in a good year, sometimes no allowance. But when we didn't get allowance, if you want to eat, you do the chores. That's just, the rules. And so are we, going back to that with kids going, look, these are your duties. You need your basic duties. These are your duties. We're not hiring a cleaning lady. No. Right? These are the chores you have to do. Now, if there are some extra things, if you want to make some extra money, I'm going to have you help the person across the street. I'm going to have you do this. I'm going to have you do this. And then what are you going to spend that money on? And we really need to teach kids how to. You want money for something. Your Christmas gift, we're only going to be spending $100 on, but what you want is $229. So because now with Black Friday, the price went up. Right? So if you want to raise that money, go and do a lemonade stand. It's interesting. Last year, I'm walking the dog, and there was a lemonade stand, and these kids are like, "We want to buy our parents Christmas presents." Now, they could have been lying, but they had me. They had me at lemonade. And they used their hands to drop the ice. And I don't know if the pitcher was clean or whatever, but I got to tell you, that was the best tasting lemonade. And of course, I overpaid for it, because I wanted them to be able to buy their parents Christmas presents. No, financial literacy. That's all a part of it. Teach your kids how to make a dollar last. Teach your kids, let them watch you. Let them see how you spend. I know a lot of parents I don't want to show the kids the finances. Let them watch. Let them look. Let them learn. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.